Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday morning. We're less than a week away from the NFL draft. In fact, at this time next week, we'll have woken up and the first round of the NFL draft will be over, and we'll almost certainly know what the 49ers are planning with Deebo Samuel. I think we actually know what they're planning, but we'll also almost certainly know what the 49ers will actually do. And I'll explain that right now as we begin to talk about some more draft prospects, this time at wide receiver. So the 49ers currently have Deebo Samuel, obviously, on their roster, under contract through at least 2022, with the ability to franchise tag him beyond that. But he has requested a trade. And the timing of the trade request, I think, was no surprise because it came about a week before the NFL draft. So it forces the 49ers into a little bit of a decision. Keep Deebo Samuel, call a little bit of a bluff, don't trade him, work forward, anticipate that this will all resolve itself contractually with deadline pressure, or trade Deebo Samuel ahead of the draft, similar to how the 49ers traded DeForest Buckner, and use the resulting capital to acquire a replacement piece or replacement pieces. In a nutshell, that is the choice facing the 49ers right now. So here's my first point. Make no mistake, a 49ers trade of Deebo Samuel remains unlikely, point blank. Deebo Samuel is extremely valuable to this team. In fact, many say that he was the heartbeat of the offense last year, and I probably wouldn't argue with them if they made that point. And obviously, we've heard that point made many times. I myself wrote an article about Deebo Samuel's value to the 49ers last week, and if you look at it analytically, their efficiency with him on the field versus their efficiency with him off the field, they were over 4 times as efficient when Deebo Samuel was on the football field last year. And he was instrumental in so many different ways, not only as the league's second most efficient receiver behind Cooper Kupp, but also as the indispensable running back that the 49ers needed once they started suffering a lot of injuries at that position later in the year. So for the 49ers to justify trading Deebo Samuel, they would have to be offered a trade return that was equal to or worth more than his current value to the team. And I'll tell you what, if Deebo Samuel made the 49ers 4 times as efficient offensively when he was on the field versus when he was off of it, and if Deebo Samuel was the locker room heartbeat, the guy who came out with the boombox, you remember Super Gremlin, you remember all that, if Deebo Samuel was setting the right tone physically by running guys over at a historic rate, no player in NFL history since we've been tracking this for over 15 years has averaged more yards after the catch per reception, and he did it by knocking guys' mouth guards out. I mean, that was a whole mentality thing, right? The Super Gremlin and the ability to just bully people on the field. That was a tone-setting mentality. If the 49ers believe that the value of that is as high as I think they believe it is, it would take an astronomical trade offer to pry Deebo Samuel away from the 49ers. He's simply that important to the team. So, yes, maybe the Jets are willing to pay up, and they have the number 4 overall pick and the number 10 overall pick, a couple second-round picks. It would take a whole hell of a lot, especially when you consider the fact that Tyreek Hill commanded 5 total draft picks. And I think the King's ransom that Josina Anderson was talking about that the 49ers would require to move Deebo Samuel, I think it's likely that that King's ransom would be something near what Tyreek Hill commanded to be moved from Kansas City to the Miami Dolphins. So, because Deebo Samuel remains so valuable to the 49ers and probably not as valuable to any prospective trade suitor, I don't think it's likely that he's traded, but it's a never say never football league. And perhaps the New York Jets were familiar with Deebo Samuel, who have that draft capital. Maybe they would be willing to pay the price that makes the 49ers move on if they don't believe that Deebo Samuel is acting rationally and they don't think that that would be good for their locker room. But make no mistake, the trade remains unlikely. Nothing's ever impossible in the NFL. We're just going to say unlikely for now. If the 49ers are on the market to replace Deebo Samuel in this upcoming draft, they'll almost certainly have a first-round pick. So let's say that again. Let's explain that slow to make sure this point sinks home. Right now, the 49ers aren't on the market to replace Deebo Samuel. But if they do end up on the market by the time of next Thursday, when that first round happens, they'll almost certainly have a first-round pick. Why? Because the 49ers dictate the trade price here. If they don't have to trade Deebo Samuel, then they can dictate that price. If the offer is not high enough, they won't trade him. So in my opinion, and in my prediction, if the 49ers do indeed trade Deebo Samuel, they will re-enter the first round of this draft that they initially exited when they traded for Trey Lance, or the number 3 pick that eventually led to Trey Lance last year. As it stands right now, the 49ers pick first at number 61. That's late in the second round. But I don't think they sit there and they accept the Deebo Samuel trade offer because they're not desperate for something that doesn't include a first rounder. That package is going to have to include a first rounder. So if this becomes like a Buckner-Kinlaw situation, the 49ers do trade away the prized asset of Deebo Samuel, I do believe that they're going to have a first-round pick. I think that's a near certainty because I don't think that they would be smart, and I don't think they're dumb enough to accept anything lower than a package that includes a first-rounder. So that leads us to this hypothetical discussion. Again, remember, make no mistake, trading Deebo Samuel is unlikely. I'm not going for clickbait here. I'm just going to try to discuss hypothetical possibilities because we have to be ready for any and all situations leading up into this NFL draft. It's one of the most unpredictable events in sports, and that's why people, I think, are so drawn to watching it, but beyond the emotion that you see when these guys' lives are changed when they're picked by an NFL team. But that's beside the point. We're talking about potential 49ers draft prospects next week in the unlikely event of a water landing. No, in the unlikely event of a Deebo Samuel trade. So if the 49ers are on that market next week, they will have a first-round pick. What should the 49ers do at wide receiver? Well, that is in this article up on Athletic that I will copy into the chat section right now. We'll make the copy right there, go over into the comment section, sign up to for the Athletic through this link. I discussed 4 receiver prospects. Now, are the 49ers options limited to these 4 prospects? Absolutely not, but these 4 prospects are good starting discussion points for the 49ers' possible preference at wide receiver. And I'll say this much. The 49ers' goal should not be to find a Deebo Samuel clone. Why? Because a Deebo Samuel clone does not exist. Deebo is the only player in NFL history to have 1,500 receiving yards and 500 rushing yards in a single season. That's counting the playoffs this past 2021 campaign. These guys don't come around often. In fact, they may not come around at all, except for Deebo Samuel himself, which underscores the importance, in my opinion, of the 49ers just paying and keeping this guy, finding contractual even ground, finding personal middle ground, and paying Deebo Samuel moving forward because he is such a unique player. And obviously, Kyle Shanahan's system is predicated on that positionless skill position versatility. The 49ers need Deebo Samuel. I think Deebo Samuel needs the 49ers. It's a perfectly symbiotic relationship. And if rational heads prevail, cooler heads prevail, the 49ers and Deebo Samuel will resolve their differences, find suitable terms for a contract extension, and move forward. But if that can't happen and the 49ers do need to find another X wideout, well, I don't think their goal should be to find a Deebo Samuel clone. They can look for physical characteristics that work within Kyle Shanahan's system. Obviously, they want strength. I think the Dante Pettis experiment flamed out on them. That was a nimbler receiver, wasn't quite as strong. This is an offense under Kyle Shanahan that's trying to be rugged, that's trying to run block. They run more than they pass the football. I don't think it's going to change under Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is going to run a little bit too if the 2021 action of his is any indication. So they need wide receivers who can block. Obviously, they're in love with a guy like Jawan Jennings who can get under the skin of opposing defenses, and Deebo Samuel is historically good as far as knocking opponents' mouth guards out and delivering yards after the catch. George Kittle really good at that as well. I consider him an honorary wideout. I mean, he's paid as an honorary wideout, paid more than any other tight end in the league. He reset the market because of his versatility, and the 49ers created the Yak Bros, right? They love the Yak Bros. They need to continue emphasizing strength at the receiver position. So you're not looking for Deebo Samuel clone, but you're certainly looking for some of the characteristics that Deebo Samuel has that happen to naturally fit into the 49ers scheme. And a lot of that is the anti-Dante Pettis, right? You want rugged physicality. I think, at all receiver spots. And even Brandon Ayuk, who's widened up since joining the 49ers, has brought a little bit of that. So with that in mind, here are a couple intriguing first-round names, or names with a first-round grade. One of them's up on the screen. That's Treylon Burks from Arkansas. And then another intriguing first-round name is somebody who might have been considered a pipe dream not too long ago, might still be considered a pipe dream for the 49ers, but USC's Drake London. In the past, we had not really been accustomed to the 49ers going after these 6'2", 6'3" wideouts. And Treylon Burks is 6'2", weighs about 225 pounds. I mean, he's built like a linebacker, especially considering that linebackers in the modern NFL have downsized. And Drake London, he's nearly 6'4" and 220 pounds. But Treylon Burks brings the 220, 225 at 6'2". So, I mean, again, he's built like a linebacker. The guy is an absolute truck. So many times in the past, we had discussed, well, the 49ers, they're going for a precision slot game. They're going to try to attack the middle of the field. Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback. You know, that started to evolve even with Jimmy Garoppolo under center this past year. Remember Juwan Jennings against Cincinnati in overtime? Outside wide receiver. I forget if it was a first, second, or third down, but Jimmy Garoppolo went outside the numbers on an island to Juwan Jennings, who just made a manly catch against solid coverage on the road against the Bengals. And that set that 49ers drive really far into motion. Brandon Ayuk would cap it off with the game-winning touchdown. The 49ers, with a bigger body like Juwan Jennings at 6'3", were not afraid to, go to a guy with some ball skills outside. They weren't afraid to start out muscling opposing cornerbacks. And to be honest, for a team that's been victimized defensively by pass interference so many times, the 49ers had more DPIs called against them than any other team in football last year. I think it's smart to get on that bandwagon. Have some options who could win one-on-one on the outside. I know, as Kyle Shanahan, you love that precision game. You love the crossers. You love, the choreographed offense. But sometimes you just got to let talent go out and get the football. And, Brandon Ayuk obviously did some of that this year. He was amazing, I thought, in single coverage. I thought he was amazing winning one-on-one. But two guys who, have shown the ability to win one-on-one and shown the ability to leverage their size into, just some impressive production to me are Treylon Burks and especially Drake London. Now, these are two big receivers. You could see how big Burks is here. I could scroll down to show you a little bit of Drake London highlights down here. I mean, let's just watch a little bit of these Drake London highlights. I could turn down the sound. We'll make this a little bit bigger up on the screen. But Drake London, this may be a little laggy, but you could just YouTube it yourself. Every single play of this reel seems to be some contested catch stuff downfield. It's Keaton Slovis throwing to him, but here, contested catch downfield, Drake London. He'll be another one against Stanford, outside the numbers, Drake London. Great ball anticipatory skills while that pass is in the air. He's another contested catch, Drake London. At this point, I think you're probably getting the idea. The guy is a complete stud while the ball's in the air, utilizes every bit of that 6'4" frame. He's tough here, takes a big hit, but is still able to hold on to the ball. If the 49ers offense is moving into the direction of Trey Lance, and, not only Trey Lance, but just the ability to add another dimension like this, to be able to beat cornerbacks while the ball is in flight, Drake London is a first-round pick for a reason. So I don't want to belabor this one too long, but if we go up to watch Treylon Burks, it's going to be a little less of the contested catch stuff with Treylon Burks and a little bit more of what you saw from Deebo Samuel. The short passes turned into yak. And here you can see the 6'2", 225-pound body. I mean, the guy is an absolute unit. And because he's an absolute unit, he's tough to bring down. He's easy to see from the quarterback's perspective. And, although the route running isn't completely polished for neither of the two receivers I'm showing you right now, Burks has big hands. And, I mean, he's a skilled receiver. He's not going to drop a lot of passes. This one right here, he just runs away from everybody. Now, Treylon Burks, he runs a 4.55. That's what he ran at the combine. But obviously the game speed is good, and at college he just ran away from everybody. These guys on the college film cannot keep up with Treylon Burks. You're going to get another angle here. I don't think anybody even touches him. Maybe a little bit of contact, but you just look at the size. You could see the size, and I don't think that people are going to appreciate how well this can translate to the NFL level until he can't run away from guys anymore, because then he could start laying some of the wood, right? Then he could start turning around and doing some of the Deebo Samuel-esque stuff. The problem with the college tape is that Treylon Burks was just running away from everybody. And when he's running away from everybody, well, you can't really see the physical prowess, but it certainly is there. I think he can certainly block. He has the size to do a lot of good stuff. So that's Treylon Burks. That was Drake London. Those are two players who absolutely have first-round value, who I think the 49ers would be intrigued by. And I think they'd be more intrigued by some of these guys than, even Garrett Wilson, who by consensus is one of the top prospects at the receiver position in his draft. Chris Olave, his Ohio State teammate. Jamison Williams from Alabama. I mean, those are all guys who are like 183, 187, 179. I think that ship has sailed for the 49ers. I think they want big, tough, rugged receivers. I think they're trying to zag while the rest of the league is zigging. Those defensive backs are getting smaller. Even linebackers are getting smaller. I think the 49ers like that Deebo Samuel component of just trucking those guys, of destroying those guys, which is why Drake London and especially Treylon Burks are two first-round prospects that I really like for the 49ers. Now, if you move into second and third round value, Skyy Moore from Western Michigan, same school as Jalen Moore, not to be confused with Jalen Moore, same last name, and David Bell out of Purdue are two names to keep an eye out for if you're the 49ers. Skyy Moore is much smaller, much shorter, I guess I should say. He's only 5'9", so maybe he only projects to a slot weapon at the NFL level, but I put in some of his highlights into the article here as well, and we could take a look at it. Skyy Moore, first of all, he has the biggest hands in the entire NFL draft, even though he's only about 5'9" or 5'10". He's got 10.25-inch hands, which is unbelievable to me. There we saw a nice slant pattern. Look at him, just put the DB in a blender, and he's going to run for the touchdown. But the fact that Skyy Moore has such large hands means that he's going to have great ball skills. We already see the ball skills on tape. And he's thicker. He's not your typical 5'9" slot receiver who can't block anybody prospect. I mean, he's 5'9" and he's nearing 200 pounds. And he can fight off press coverage. He'll be able to block if he needs to. He can run the deep ball. He can obviously run the slant. We saw the shorter crossing routes. I think that, the only reason that Skyy Moore has a second-round grade on him is because he's 5'9". And, maybe that's why the 49ers don't go for this. But again, in the past, height hasn't been as much of an issue. It's been more about separation ability. This guy certainly has the ability to separate. You'll see here, not a lot of room, gets just enough separation, and the ball skills are really, really good. So, we're talking about contingency plans for any kind of situation. And I think the 49ers, even if they keep Deebo Samuel, Skyy Moore's got to be a prospect. Skyy Moore is somebody that could fit into this offense, maybe especially if they keep Deebo Samuel, because he can fortify that slot position. Look at this one. The helmet comes flying off, but he still makes the catch. I think they grabbed his face mask earlier, grabs it twice, rips off the helmet. He can catch the ball outside the numbers. See those big hands coming into use on a lot of these clips. And obviously, with that 5'9" short area quickness, he can do stuff inside the numbers. But they're going to show a lot of this contested catch stuff. And for a guy that's 5'9", Skyy Moore is really good at it. Now, Tim Lester, who was Skyy Moore's coach at the Western Michigan University, he has a connection to the 49ers mainly through Mike LaFleur, through having worked with Mike LaFleur, who's with the Jets now. So the 49ers obviously picked Jalen Moore last year. I wouldn't rule out Skyy Moore. And then the other day I talked about David Bell. Now we can go to some of my older articles here on The Athletic, and we can talk about David Bell again right now. But this is a picture of David Bell. This is my article the other day talking about a potential apprentice for Alex Mack, assuming Alex Mack returns, maybe another defensive lineman, but 5 under-the-radar draft prospects for the 49ers, headlined by this Purdue wide receiver, David Bell. And we'll play some tape for him too, because I think I have some right here. Yep, here we go. Play some David Bell film. David Bell, he's not fast, 4.7 40, but he's got a solid frame. I mean, we're talking 6'2", 215, exactly what I was talking about a little bit earlier for the 49ers. And as you'll see, he runs solid routes. He's sturdy after the catch. I think he'd be sturdy in the pass blocking game. He's reliable. He actually ended his college career with more yards per game, 101 yards per game, than any other active college wide receiver. You see him on the end around game right here. That's going to remind people of Deebo Samuel. But again, you're not looking for a Deebo clone. I think you're just looking for a solid player. But the thing about David Bell, because his combine speed was only a 4.71, I think he's much faster on his game tape. But B, I think that's going to drop the draft grade. I think he might be around there still in the third round. So this is another prospect that the 49ers can look at if they keep Deebo Samuel. You don't have to think of this in mutually exclusive terms. If the 49ers keep Deebo Samuel, why not add a backup X receiver in somebody like David Bell? Because you don't know how long you're going to keep Deebo Samuel too. You don't know if this is just going to be a one-year thing. Deebo plays it out on his rookie deal, then enters unrestricted free agency. I think in all likelihood, you give Deebo Samuel that extension. But still, it doesn't hurt to have as many quality weapons in that receiving game as possible. And as you can see through some of this film from David Bell, he can really do a lot. Good ball skills right there against Notre Dame. Had a big game for Purdue, and he made that catch. Played for Jeff Brom, former 49ers backup quarterback, who is the coach at Purdue. So I like David Bell. I obviously like Skyy Moore. I like Treylon Burks, and I like Drake London. But I like a whole lot more than that for the 49ers. This is just going through some of the contingency plans that the team may have. And again, there's no mutual exclusivity here. Even if you keep Deebo Samuel, you could still draft a wide receiver. I know the 49ers have hosted other guys as well. I know that they've so this is not going to be a mutually, this is not going to be something where you're just limited to the four guys I'm talking about. Most of this is for discussion purposes. You open up a dialogue about what the 49ers might like or might not like from a physical perspective, from a talent trait perspective. And I think when you talk about Drake London, when you talk about Treylon Burks, David Bell, and Skyy Moore, then you're talking about the skill sets that the 49ers might covet at the wide receiver position. But again, a Deebo Samuel trade remains unlikely. So let's couch everything with that. But if the 49ers are on the market to replace Deebo Samuel, not just complement him next week, they'll almost certainly have a first-round pick just because Deebo's worth so much to them. All right, I'll take a couple of questions, and then we'll have to get running. But the article that came out this morning is one that I certainly hope that you check out. I'll put it back up on the screen because this is the old one that's currently on the screen. It's this one right here. If the 49ers trade Deebo Samuel, these four receivers in the draft could intrigue them. We'll put it right back there in the chat section. Take it out. And I'll answer some questions here from Chris Bellamy. David, if Deebo's traded, what are the possibilities of drafting a more premium position, i.e. defensive end or right tackle in the middle of round one and still waiting to replace wide receiver in rounds 2 and 3? Absolutely. That's possible. Boye Mafe, the defensive end out of Minnesota, edge rusher, his stock seems to just be rising and rising and rising with how much of an athletic freak he is. He might be a round 1 guy, lower round 2 guy. Maybe that's something the 49ers do. And that's why I showed second and third round receivers in this piece and in this video. I showed you Skyy Moore, second round grade. I showed you David Bell, third round grade. You can wait a little bit later to grab that receiver. Remember, Deebo Samuel wasn't drafted until the second round. He wasn't the first round pick. So maybe you wait a little bit longer to go for that wideout. Although I prefer to keep Deebo if things don't work out, is trading Deebo for 2 first-round draft picks too much to ask? No, I don't think it's too much to ask. And I don't think, it's unlikely you get that. But I think you can ask for that because Deebo Samuel might be that important to you as the 49ers. Right now, I have Giants tickets for May 7th. If anybody wants to buy my Giants tickets on May 7th, it's Buster Posey Day. Go ahead and, message me or put them in the comment section. But I put them up on StubHub for a lot more than they're worth because there's still a chance I might be able to go to the game, but I'm not sure yet. There are other plans there. So I put the tickets up there for way more than they're worth. And if somebody decides to go and swipe those tickets for that amount of money, well, then good for them. That will make my decision for me. But I'm not anticipating them being sold. Now, as we get closer to the date, I may lower the price on the tickets because I may have determined my plans and I'll be much more serious about actually selling them. But the 49ers can dangle out, Deebo's available for 2 first-round picks right now because he's worth a whole hell of a lot to them. And if somebody's willing to meet that demand, great. Okay, you can have Deebo Samuel. But it could still be one of those where, yeah, this is not likely to happen, but we'll still dangle that out there just in case you guys want it. So it's not too much to ask, but you're not likely to get it, if that makes sense. But at this point, I think the 49ers, they're in the position of leverage when it comes to these dealings because Deebo is so important to them and he's under contract with them for 2022. Yeah, you can ask some obscene amount. If somebody's willing to meet it, if the Jets are desperate, okay, see ya, Deebo. Have fun in New York. Have fun. Say hi to Robert Saleh while you're over there. It's unlikely the Jets are going to be willing to fork over that much, but hey, if that's what the market determines, that's what the market determines. And the 49ers ride off happily into the sunset with a couple first-round picks. So I think there's a lot of gray area here, and it's a lot like me selling my Giants tickets on StubHub. Lombardi, what percentage do you think Deebo will be traded? I still think it's 10 to 20%. I still think it's really low. Remember, there have been 2 trade demands in the past in this regime, from Robbie Gould first and then from Raheem Mostert. Neither of those 2 players was traded. How's the offensive line looking? What is the state of the offensive line? I don't think it's looking great right now. That's my main point of criticism for the 49ers. I mean, we can go to this article right here. Not a lot of you watched a video yesterday on Alex Mack. What if Alex Mack does retire because he hasn't shown up yet at the offseason program? A look at J.C. Treader and other 49ers center options in the draft. I'm copying that into the chat section. You can go ahead and check it out. That's the main question, but there's so many others. Mike McGlinchey's health at right tackle. Who plays right guard? Because I don't know if you want Daniel Brunskill there. I think he's a better swing tackle, versatile replacement for the 49ers. He was so good at that in 2019. So you want to upgrade that position. Where's Jalen Moore at? Where's Aaron Banks at in terms of left guard? I mean, there's so many questions before we even get to that center spot with Alex Mack. So, if I'm a 49ers fan, I'm worried about the offensive line. I actually think it's a more pressing issue and a bigger deal than Deebo Samuel, who's actually under contract through 2022, and Jimmy Garoppolo, who's not owed any guaranteed money in 2022. So, you still have time to resolve that situation. I mean, those are the 2 things that people are watching videos and commenting and tweeting about, but they're not talking about the offensive line. And none of that matters if the 49ers don't improve their offensive line. So this is what people should be talking about. This is where the criticism should be headed. This is where the questions should be directed, is the offensive line, a position group that has been sketchy for the 49ers in pass protection in every single season of the Kyle Shanahan era. So I would offer that the offensive line is where you absolutely must start paying close attention over the next few days, especially the draft. The 49ers have some ground to make up. How many years can the 49ers tag Deebo after 2022? The 49ers can tag Deebo Samuel for 2 seasons after 2022 before, I think after the first one, it would probably become financially ridiculous. You don't know what the franchise tag is going to be. It's going to evolve every year based on the top 5 salaries of the position. So with Hopkins, Hopkins is up there, but with Tyreek Hill and with Devontae Adams having signed new deals, that tag is going to be worth a whole lot more next season. All right. Why is Treader still available? That's a good question. And that makes me think that maybe the 49ers are running a Joe Staley, Trent Williams deal here. Treader, he's got a bad knee and he's got a bad ankle. Yes, it limited his practice time in Cleveland. But the guy is also an Iron Man. Despite the fact that he has some issues, he didn't miss a single game in 5 seasons with the Browns. So you have to weigh those 2 things. And that might be part of the reason why he's still available. He also could be talking behind the scenes with the Niners. And they might know that Alex Mack is retiring. and they're just waiting to sign J.C. Tretter so it doesn't affect the comp pick formula. That wouldn't come until after the draft. So I don't know. It's one of those situations where we just have to wait and see what the deal is with Alex Mack and with J.C. Tretter and what the 49ers do at the draft. There's going to be a lot answered, I think, over the course of the next week. The NFL draft is going to give us a firmer answer on Deebo. It's going to give us a firmer answer on Mack. It's going to give us a firmer answer on who the 49ers are going to bring into the fold talent-wise to pay the draft class. They're going to have to open up some salary cap space. Maybe it brings us an answer on Jimmy Garoppolo because it could be another inflection point for a trade, although I don't think that will happen until later, given the fact the league has already spoken about his shoulder injury. I mean, we've seen what the shoulder surgery has done to the value, obviously, and teams are just waiting and seeing. That was the big question. So Garoppolo should be throwing again, come late June, early July. That's more likely to be resolved a little bit closer to training camp. All right, a little bit more here. What do you think of Christian Watson from North Dakota State? Do you think the 49ers draft him? Yes, but a little bit lower. You know, I don't see Watson as premium first-round pick capital. He's still a little lanky, especially considering the parameters of the system. He would have to add some muscle. It's cool that he used to play, on Trey Lance's team. I think that's neat. I think he tracks the deep ball well. You love those long strides. He's 6'4", right? But I still, I'm serious when I say that the 49ers are trying to build a rugged receiver room. I'm serious when I say that the Dante Pettis experiment failed. I'm not saying that Christian Watson is Dante Pettis, but I think they're going for Deebo-type physicality moving forward, which is why I love Treylon Burks. Even Skyy Moore at 5'9", I think he could bring some of that because he's thick at that 5'9". David Bell from Purdue. Drake London, 6'4", 220. Maybe a little bit less physical than Treylon Burks, but he brings the whole dimension of the ball skills. Well, what I love about Skyy Moore is he's 5'9", yet he's got the biggest hands in the draft. That's crazy. 10 and a quarter inch hands. I mean, that's huge. I mean, I have decently big hands. I'm 6'5". If the 49ers want to draft me, they can, but I don't have 10 and a quarter inch hands. So Skyy Moore, look out for him. Any more questions? Oh, yeah. Velus Jones. I mean, he might not be until the 5th or 6th round kind of guy. I mean, I've seen varying grades on him out of Tennessee. That could also be, I mean, like I said, I didn't list every single player in this article, and I could go through all the receivers and give you some reason why they might fit with Kyle Shanahan, but I just wanted to start the discussion today. They definitely need to improve the offensive line. For a team that preaches building the roster in the trenches first, they haven't done much at all on the O-line except for extending Williams. I agree. I mean, they've drafted guys. They've drafted Aaron Banks. They drafted Jalen Moore. The Banks pick came in the 2nd round, but they have to – I mean, these guys have to develop and they have to pan out for those draft picks to actually mean something. Yeah, Watson does drop some passes, but I mean, a lot of it's a projection. A lot of it's how well can you develop these guys. He's coming from an FCS school, remember? So just like Trey Lance from the same FCS school, a lot of this is going to be moldable clay. Watson, probably a guy that you only go for if you keep Deebo Samuel, right? You have more runway time to develop him. You go with a more polished receiver like a David Bell if you don't want to go first-round receiver if Deebo Samuel is gone. All right, everybody, thank you for joining today. Really appreciate you, Harold. You guys are all the best. Yeah, I'm pretty tall. 6'5.5", by the way. Not just everybody who meets me in person at these 49ers games, they're always like, oh, dang, I didn't expect that you're that tall. I guess it's because I'm sitting down the whole time. But, yeah, I got 6'5", 200+. If football had been the sport, it would have been receiver or tight end. But football wasn't the chosen sport. I love talking about football, though. So it's all good. All right, guys. Everybody take care. Thanks again for all the time. Make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. Helps us a lot. We're trying to grow this thing as quickly as possible. So if you're one of the many people watching right now, go down there, hit that subscribe button, maybe turn on the notifications when I come aboard. So we're talking more Deebo Samuel. There'll be a lot more content coming up soon. For now, everybody take care. It's been good. Everybody have a good Friday. Maybe I'll check in one more time here as we enter the final weekend before the draft. Bye now.